thing I wanted to cover before I go to the interview is play you a clip from Fulton County, Georgia, their election violation committee, and it's pretty overwhelming. They say the election was so fraudulent in every area, 1.7 million ballots there's no record of, and that's in one state. That's not in America. That's just in Georgia. So, and I think Trump supposedly lost by about 10,000 votes. So he won in a landslide, probably by about 1 million votes. But this committee is exposing that and saying, yes, it was a fraudulent election, period. And that's encouraging because more and more of that's coming out. It might not change the last election, but it wakes people up to, yeah, that was a lie, like we said it was. It was totally fraudulent, and Trump beat Biden by millions and millions of votes, and therefore he's not legitimate, and therefore he should have all the legislation, all the executive orders, everything that happened during his presidency should also be erased. Anyway, watch this clip, and then I'll go to the interview.
There's enough evidence to suggest that the respondents violated Georgia election laws and state election board rules to such an excess that we should be embarrassed for the Fulton County registration and elections. We should be embarrassed for the chief election official of Georgia and its election division. And yes, we should be embarrassed for the state election board and its dysfunction in handling this case. First, the problem with election day count and the failure to properly secure, protect, and document the safety and authenticity of the votes from 10 advance voting locations is appalling. Record keeping is abysmal. Proper documentation to ensure the public that votes or ballot boxes have not been tampered with is shamefully poor. The opportunity to electronically stuff the ballot box was obviously available, and that has left a film of doubt and suspicion over Fulton County that may be impossible to wipe away. Second, as far as the complaint of the recount, someone should be held accountable for the adding votes electronically, or failing or refusing to produce ballot images for the complainants, and maybe even the court, or for double scanning of ballots. Dominion claims its machines do not allow double scanning of thousands of votes. The question remains, how did that happen? Did Dominion lie to the state of Georgia? Double scanning and double counting of votes is fraud. The FBI states that voting twice is a violation of law. Then officially counting votes twice is also a violation. The results of the RLA hand count and the machine recount should be officially amended and reflect the correct totals. The recount with 17,852 ballot images and more than 16,000 electronically added votes should have those votes expunged, or the paper ballots should be investigated by an independent investigator. Ballot images were required to be made and preserved as of February 2020. With the failure to retain 380,000 ballot images from the November 3rd election be indicative of gross negligence? The county broke the necessary audit trail to validate the authenticity of the votes. Either the votes should be invalidated or the paper ballots must be investigated to prove their veracity. If this is the way to conduct an election, then no election should be certified as true and accurate. And there's no way that this election or recount should have been certified.
Cleta Mitchell, thank you so much for joining me again today.
Oh, Curtis, it's great to be back with you. Thanks for having me.
So much has happened. The last time you were on was September of 22, so about a year and a half ago, right before the midterm elections.
Right.
And I know a lot of those did not go as we had hoped, and it looked like there was a lot of funny business in some of the states as well. I just showed before you came on a clip, the Georgia State Election Board hearing last week showed a clip of that where they were discussing all the failures of the 2020 general election in Fulton County, so people would have an idea that, yeah, this is coming out in the open now. We all knew it back then. It was clear.
Right.
You could just see all the inconsistencies and all the lies and all the hidden cameras and all the things, but now it's actually coming out. So talk a little bit about that. What are some of the things that have been happening to really open people's eyes to the reality of 2020?
Well, people say to me, I hear people say all the time, not anybody, by the way, that are people who share my principles, because people who share my principles know it's important to document what happened in 2020. But, you hear the left-wing media and all say, well, let's just move on, just move past 2020 and they call us names, we're election deniers. And I always say, well, I don't deny that there was an election. I just deny that it was conducted properly and legally and in accordance with the way that the legislatures had intended. But what's happened is the thing that you saw on the Georgia State Election Board at the Georgia State Election Board meeting was this is, if you can imagine this is a complaint that was filed by two researchers. It's a very thorough complaint that was filed by two researchers in 2021 and first submitted to the governor. And his staff spent 6 weeks looking at it and said, this is really a problem. It was about all the various problems in Fulton County, Georgia in 2020. And the governor is the one who sent it over to the state election board for a further investigation. I want to say it was November of 2021. And that complaint just got to the state election board in May of 2024. And if you watch, I think the clip that it's actually pretty interesting to watch the entire clip of the meeting.
Yes.
Because the Secretary of State's office has now been, quote, investigating that for almost 3 years. And so Dr. Jan Johnson, who's one of the members of the state election board, said, did you look at this? Well, no, we didn't look at that. Did you look at this? Well, no, we didn't look at that. Did you? And then they're just ready to say, okay, well, let's just give a letter of reprimand and move on. Now, Fulton County gets reprimanded regularly for failure to adhere to the law. And so it's really important that we try to get Fulton County to obey the law. And I would say that about these other election administrators as well in some of these key places. Maricopa County, where they just have a pattern and practice of disregarding state law and making it up as they go along. Jocelyn Benson in Michigan, same thing. And a court just said yesterday that it did not appear that she had the authority to order, if you can believe this, we all know this, the law says you have to do certain things, take certain steps to verify signatures on mail-in ballots. And she issued a directive to all of the counties and to the clerks. I guess they do it by township clerks in Michigan. Oh, no, you don't have to abide by that. You don't have to follow that. Just do this instead. So a judge yesterday said, no, you don't actually have the authority to do that. But so look, I mean, one of the things that worries me, why does this matter? It matters because yesterday, Merrick Garland and Attorney General of the United States had this big meeting, the Election Threats Task Force that he convened, and all they could talk about was all of these people who are harassing election administrators, and they've had this big campaign to try to make sure that citizens asking questions, citizens saying, are you doing this correctly, and all of that, they want to try to chill citizen involvement. But we just keep saying we are following the law, and we try to be right and be polite. I always tell people, don't threaten anybody. You shouldn't be threatening anybody, but we do want them to do their jobs. And what I'm worried about is that the left and led by Merrick Garland, the Democrats' henchman, that he is going to try to create a chilling effect on our ability to ask the kinds of questions, to get the answers, and to get them ahead of time, so we're not just finding out the next day or the week after what they've done.
That's right. No, it's as it keeps coming out, so many people that maybe haven't paid attention to all this, but just in Georgia, which is right next to where I am in Alabama, that they now say that 1.7 million of the ballot images were destroyed. That's in one
Right,
state. That's not across America, which would be a problem. The election
right,
was far less than that for all the swing states. We're talking
right,
about a couple 100,000 people changed the election. One
right.
state, 1.7 million. Oh no, we didn't keep the images of the ballots. Well, there's only
No, and
one reason you'd be doing
yeah.
that.
And that is, and remember, it's required under federal and state of Georgia law to retain all of those election materials. They're supposed to retain all of under federal law for 22 months. And under state law, I think they've extended that to 24 months. And they deleted everything in 2021. No,
Yeah.
I mean, following the law seems to be the hardest thing for election administrators to do.
Well, it is because when you know your candidate's going to lose and you don't
If
have
it's
the,
fair.
yeah, you don't have the morality and the to do it the right way that you've sworn to do. That's what's really changed in our country over both of our lifetime
Right,
is
yeah,
there's just the law means nothing. It's total
right.
disregard. We'll do whatever we want to do, whenever we want to do it. And we've seen the weaponization of that so much. Yeah, 71 counties could not produce the original ballot images in Georgia alone, which was crazy. Talk
Crazy.
for a minute about, and Tucker covered this a little bit this last week, but
Mhm.
the reality with all the illegal immigrants in America now, and there's over 30 million non-citizens in America.
That's right.
And so talk about that for a minute.
Well, one of the things that I started really, I think God put this on my heart in January of this year, that I really needed to focus on non-citizen voting. And it's just not something that I had really zeroed in on in all the work I've done all these years. So I started really working on that. I started looking at, what does the statute say about non-citizen voting? What does the criminal law say? What do the federal laws say? And what I've realized is that the federal statute, the Help America Vote Act, passed 2002, and the National Voter Registration Act passed in 1993. Both of those federal laws govern a lot of what happens with regard to elections, particularly voter registration, mainly voter registration. And both of those laws just assume that the immigration laws are going to be enforced. And so when you are looking at a situation like we have in 2024 that we could never have imagined 22 years ago or 31 years ago, you realize, oh my gosh, this system is so porous. It just invites anybody who wants to commit mischief and fraud to do so. And I'll give you an example. I did not know until I started working on this that non-citizens can get Social Security numbers. I didn't know that illegals can get Social Security numbers if the administration decides to name them as asylum seekers or asylees or a parolee. And so now and this administration is handing out that status by the hundreds of thousands. We don't even really know. So now you have non-citizens who get Social Security numbers, and you have people who came here illegally but have been blessed by the Biden administration. They're getting Social Security numbers. And then I looked at the driver's licenses requirements for every state. Every state issues driver's licenses to non-citizens, and 19 states issue driver's licenses to illegals. So the Help America Vote Act, passed in 2002, says that before someone's added to the voter rolls, their residence and identity has to be confirmed and verified. What are the ways that those are verified? Driver's license and last four, the Social Security number. You do not have to be a citizen, and you can be illegal. And you can have a driver's license in 19 states. You can get a Social Security number. So I started working on members of Congress in January, and every time I was in a meeting where or Speaker Johnson was anywhere present, I would say, "What are you going to do about non-citizen voting? What are you going to do about non-citizen voting?" And I started working with Chip Roy from Texas and Mike Lee from Utah, Senator Lee and Representative Roy, and we started working on a bill to amend the federal law because, to add insult to injury, the Supreme Court of the United States in 2013 said that because Congress had not required documentary proof of citizenship, that the states had no authority, and the Election Assistance Commission had no authority to require proof that when somebody checks the box and says, yes, I'm a U.S. citizen, that the states have no authority to ask or require the documentary proof of that. So we are trying to unwind. So last week, Speaker Johnson hosted a press conference. Representative Roy and Senator Lee were there. Several leaders, like conservative groups, were there, and announcing the filing of the SAVE Act, the Strengthening American Voter Eligibility Act, to require the states to receive documentary proof of citizenship before they put anybody on the voter rolls, and that anyone who's found not to be a citizen can be removed from the voter rolls at any time. So look, I mean, we're working on trying to get that through the House. I think it's important. People understand 87% of people want to have only citizens voting in U.S. elections. And so we have a website that we started last week called Only Citizens Vote Coalition, onlycitizensvotecoalition.com. People are welcome to go to that, sign up, get the materials, find out what's going on in your community. We're having a toolkit. People can use that to find out what's going on in their local communities and in their states. But we've got to watch this because there are all these millions of illegals in